What if that infamous World of Warcraft plague wasn't just a bug, but a secret US government experiment to study how we'd react to a real pandemic? While you were panicking in-game, what if federal scientists were watching, taking notes, and using your chaos to shape real-world crisis plans? Here's how your gaming session could have become national security data. What started as a raid boss debuff in Zul'Gurub somehow escaped containment and turned Azeroth's major cities into virtual morgues. While players were busy freaking out, epidemiologists weren't seeing a game bug. They saw thousands of humans reacting naturally to a pandemic. No focus groups, no hypothetical surveys, just gamers making real decisions when digital death came knocking. But what if this was not just a happy accident? What if someone realized they could study pandemic behavior without consent forms or ethics committees? Just by watching gamers react to virtual death, the intelligence value would be enormous. The US government has a long history of conducting controversial studies on unwitting populations. From the infamous Tuskegee experiments to MKUltra, there is precedent for authorities valuing data collection over informed consent. The timing is suspicious. September 2005, just 4 years after September 11th, when bioterrorism fears were at their peak. Government agencies desperately needed data on mass panic responses. Suddenly, they had thousands of people reacting in real time to a contagious outbreak, with every action logged and recorded. And now I'm curious, what's something that's happened to you in a game or anywhere that you still can't explain? Drop your story in the comments. I want to see how bizarre things can get. I will personally respond to every single comment. Of course, Blizzard has always maintained this was simply a programming oversight, but we both know if it was something more than that, they wouldn't be able to tell us even if they wanted to. Let's dive deeper into what actually happened and see if we can separate fact from fiction. September 13th, 2005. Blizzard had just released the Zul'Gurub raid endgame content, where the most hardcore players faced off against Hakkar the Soulflayer. This blood god had a nasty trick up his sleeve, a debuff called Corrupted Blood that drained health points and jumped to nearby characters. The effect was supposed to stay contained within his lair. When players teleported back to major cities, their pets and minions carried the infection with them. Within hours, Ironforge and Orgrimmar, the virtual equivalents of New York and Los Angeles, became charnel houses. Character corpses literally carpeted the streets. What happened next was fascinating. Some high-level players realized they could survive the continuous damage and intentionally infected others, virtual bioterrorists creating chaos for fun. Others transformed into impromptu first responders, using healing spells to keep lower-level players alive before quickly succumbing themselves. Game masters were powerless to contain it. Blizzard's support lines were flooded. Server performance tanked as the death animations and spell effects multiplied. When traditional fixes failed, Blizzard finally resorted to hard server resets and emergency patches. But by then, epidemiologists had already noticed. They saw something remarkable: the first large-scale, unintentional human behavioral response to a pandemic they could study without ethical limitations. Nina Pfefferman, a Tufts University researcher, later explained, "It was the first time we could watch how people actually react in a pandemic, rather than how we think they'd react." Players had no script to follow, no CDC guidelines to obey or ignore, just their own instincts when facing an invisible, deadly threat spreading through their virtual community. What made this so valuable wasn't just the scale, it was the authenticity. Players had real emotional and financial investments in their characters. Some had spent thousands of hours building their virtual lives. The fear and decision-making weren't simulated. They were genuine human responses playing out in real time. But here's what Blizzard never told you about those 7 days of chaos. While players were dying in virtual streets, someone else was watching. Someone with clearance levels that don't officially exist. And what they discovered in that data would change how governments prepare for biological warfare forever. Want to see how a 1987 TV hijacking accidentally created cyberpunk gaming? Check out my Max Headroom video to see how it shaped every cyberpunk game you've ever played. Subscribe for more gaming secrets they don't want you to know. And remember, seek to learn, not judge.